All right, Travis, you live? You good?
Yeah, yeah. How I sound? How I sound?
You sound perfect, brother. Doc Fish, you
All right,
good?
man.
Yeah, I'm good, man.
All right, Malcolm sounds good. I hope I'm coming through clear on everybody.
Yep, yep.
All right, let's ride. All right. Hello, everybody. This is Torraine Walker, and welcome to the Black Men's Roundtable. This is something that I plan to do on a weekly basis, either on my YouTube channel or on my podcast platform, which is what this is for. And I got a really solid panel. Most of these brothers I've either worked with personally or I know them from social media. And if you follow me on social media, then you know I generally keep very solid spaces. I keep solid people that come through. I don't do a lot of characters. So I just wanted to reach out to brothers who are solid to have this conversation. So you have myself, you have Dr. Travis Harris, who calls himself the Hood Scholar, a real solid brother. You got Malcolm Flex. And Malcolm, tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing, who you are, bro.
Yeah, man, I'm a new kid on the block. Pretty much occasionally serious commentator. So, again, I just mess around online like anybody else. Somehow found myself in the politics and whatnot. But I again try to keep it relatable, man. Delve into a whole mishmash of everything. So pretty well rounded.
All right, brother. And we got Brian Fisher, Dr. Fisher, who calls himself Amputation Suck on social media, which is an excellent name. Tell people a little bit about what you do, brother, who you are.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So I'm a vascular surgeon here in Nashville, Tennessee. Been in practice now for 11 years. My practice is dedicated to saving limbs and the whole breadth of vascular surgery, but more so eliminating disparities. Black folks get their legs cut off. We get our legs cut off at a much higher rate than our counterparts. And so my life is really dedicated to helping eliminate those disparities through the holistic approach.
All right, brother. That's why I wanted to have you on, man, because I've been following your work and we've been talking offline for a long. Dr. Harris, man, give everybody what you do, man. I know, but let's let the people know.
Yeah, man. So I'm the director of Black Revolutionary Education for the International Black Freedom Alliance. We are a global world Black people organizing freedom fighting organization. We believe Black people are smart enough, talented enough, got the tools and skills necessary to get free. I'm also an HBCU professor. So I go from the corner to the classroom,
No doubt, no
from being
doubt.
outside to being in the books.
All right, all right. That's the type of scholars that we need. Not academics, we need real scholars who are with the people. So the topic of tonight's conversation is respect, relationships, and politics. I have a feeling that Black men as a whole in this culture and around the world, but we're going to focus on America right now, are not seen with the same level of respect that other populations in the Black community have. And to be completely frank, I'm talking about specifically Black men, not necessarily straight Black men, but that's going to be the majority of this focus because if you are a straight presenting male, you are going to be received in ways a little bit differently than some of the other brothers in our community are going to be. So I just wanted to have some brothers on the line to talk about what have you seen when it comes to disrespect of Black men and relationships in just our daily lives and in political spheres. So let's just start off and we'll go around the room. Travis, let's start with you and then we'll go around.
So yeah, this is not just in relationships. It's not just in politics, but this is in being a Black man in this society, right? And what I've noticed is two things. One, it's always the the poor of us or those who make mistakes or those who make wrong choices or not the best representatives, right? Those are the ones who are always chosen to represent the masses, right? Even Obama, he said, "Well, go talk to Pookie," right? Or some character that he made up, right? And what I've noticed and what you all see if you start to pay attention, it's like, okay, if we want to understand um how Black men are with women, or if we want to understand sexual assault, for example, who we go to? They go to R. Kelly, right? Not literally your father or your uncle or all the other black men in your family who treated you well, right? Not any other black man, any other positive representations, right? So of course, when it comes to politics, right, it's going to be okay, let's focus on these particular groups of black men to say this is how it is for all of us, right? So that's what I noticed. That's what I noticed happening, of course, across the board. But when we zero in onto politics, it's like, okay, we're gonna take the least of us, right? And I love all black. Let's be clear. I'm a hood, right? That's why my name is Hood. I know where we come from, right? I know what leads to the choices that we make, right? So, but they take those who may not have made the best choices and then use that to represent all of us. So, like we can use the 2080 rule, right? And it's actually lower for black men. It's probably more like 5%, 95%, right? But they'll take 20% of us to represent all 80% of us. That's the biggest thing I've noticed.
Brian, let me ask you, or Dr. Fisher, let me ask you this, because I feel like what we're talking about either goes beyond, like Dr. Harris said, the idea of from a political standpoint that we're disrespected in this way. I'm just talking about in just our daily lives, man. You know, a lot of times our opinions aren't taken seriously. A lot of times the way we move through the world and some of our life experiences aren't taken seriously, or we feel like we have to be put on the back burner to pay attention to everybody else's opinion, everybody else's lived experiences, but ours don't get any kind of respect. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I mean, as a leader in healthcare, and oftentimes I'm one of the only black folks that's on a panel, which I'm working to change. That's often the case. And I don't know if you read Cast, and there's some other good books out there that really explain this phenomenon. But I think historically, people are taught like you don't have to respect blackness. And I want to be clear too that I'm pro-black. That doesn't mean I'm anti anyone else. But I've got a black wife. I've got four black children, and I know the struggles that they'll go through. And I've seen them in some of the similar struggles that I've been through. And thankfully, they're not as bad as the struggles my dad went through as a freedom rider. But I know that exists. Those phenomena that happens, and we have to prepare, ourselves and our men to understand that's what they're going to see as often the leaders of the household. Um, that's something they're going to come for you. You often come for the leader in order to knock off a particular opinion or a particular movement or a thought process. And so naturally, black men are going to be the target of that.
Malcolm, you know, me and you have talked about that in my other conversations before. Even just the fact that Dr. Fisher said that is an issue for some people, just by saying the fact that if you come for the men first, then that's how you take out the rest of the community. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen and what some of the things you've heard just in your
Yeah,
life?
man. Honestly, I mean, it's exactly what you said. You know, the men are always the first to go because we're the linchpin of, every just society that thrives. You got to have strong men. Now, the point is, Black people and minorities in general, we've become political chess pieces, if you will. So everybody wants to sell an agenda to somebody that's got a need. A sales 101. You create a need, find a pain point, and then you press on that pain point until you can finally provide yourself as a solution. So normally we see this with politics. We see this with situations like, where we're trying to like have special interest organizations that want your donation and your dollars. Of course, they got to create a problem. So the first problem is take the strong men out the home, start, making the little boys that are going to grow into the next generation strong men look like there's no hope. And then next thing you know, you can eventually substitute yourself as a solution and start grifting dollars and everything out of it. So, I mean, culturally, Black people, we have a culture of coming from humble beginnings and always making it out. If you go back to rap culture, man, the number one thing everybody always talked about was superseding your circumstances. Like, we made it. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna buy my family this, I'm gonna buy my family that as a circumstance to having made it. But the problem is that message, when you start empowering Black people to say, hey, you can do this, you can do that, we can make it, we can become the doctors, the MDs, the researchers, the scientists, we can be all that, all that we were taught that, you start losing a lot of the leverage that you have to sell yourself as a cure. And when I say sell yourself, I mean like as a politician or as a bureaucrat that's sitting up here trying to find a way to fundraise X amount of dollars. So it's always an agenda to attack, the groups that will essentially raise up an entire group, like Black people in general, take out what's going to actually help them raise up, and then insert yourself into that hierarchy.
And that's something that I've seen in quite a few places in academia and just in activist spaces, and unfortunately in, just regular conversation. Although fortunately, a lot of this conversation is confined to academia and the activist world, although I see it bleeding out into like real world situations. Um, and it's kind of wild seeing that, because for the longest time, and I make this argument a lot, that up until maybe like the 1970s, moving into the 1980s, Black people as a whole, Black men, Black women, understood that no matter where they were on the socioeconomic ladder, except for the talented 10, that we were all Black people and that we all had some of the same demons that we had to fight. You start seeing this disconnect towards like the tail end of the 80s, moving into the 90s, where a lot of Black women are told, well, if you can make it, we'll allow you to come into the system and we'll let you make it, but you got to leave your men behind. And that was always set up in that way, even in the 60s, if you go back to the beginnings of the quote unquote war on poverty. But a lot of our sisters resisted that. But I think in the 80s, a lot of sisters, a lot of leading sisters, I don't want to say all of them, but a lot of the ones who were given the microphone took that deal. I'm not going to say no names, but some of the more prominent ones that that have been around for the last 30 years or so. I'll let you make your own decisions. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Started selling that narrative. And you see a lot more of our sisters who used to be rocking with us starting to go into that narrative. And I think that's very dangerous. And that's become a narrative that's starting to become codified in a lot of our institutions and in a lot of our own culture. I'm gonna throw this over to Travis, because I know you do work in this, man. What do you think about that? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, you spot on, Doc. It's kind of sad. So, just intellectually speaking, right? What happens after King dies. So if we think about what happens, well, a couple of things happens in the 60s, right? A couple of things happen historically that affects us intellectually and academically. So we have the rise of FBI, CIA, COINTELPRO, right? We all know this story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is it plants agents into our communities. But what it also does, unfortunately, is it starts to push agendas that are no longer beneficial to the whole community, but only to certain aspects of the community. Get this, y'all. And it's funny because right now I'm teaching about Malcolm X. And we last week we went over the Ballad of the Bullet. This week we're looking at the message to the grassroots, the house Negro and the field Negro. So that's probably what's influencing this too, right? What happened was, and Malcolm X called it, they put a lot of house Negroes in place, right? So look at this, right? Because he said this, and I caught something in the speech today that I kind of missed before. He said, and what happened in the early 60s, right? Right before the March on Washington, was actually some Black people got turned up in Alabama. Did y'all know that? He said, look,
Hey, that's
and
home.
this is why I love this, right? This is why I love Malcolm X, right? In class, we sometimes we call him Detroit Red, right? Because that's what we talk about. You ain't gonna have Malcolm X without Detroit Red. Mm-hmm. Detroit Red said, yeah, those Black people started busting some heads, and they started stabbing crackers in the back, right? And he said it was that type of revolutionary energy that was originally leading the March on Washington, right? It was that type of revolutionary energy that was leading the Black freedom movement, the movement in the 60s, right? Oh,
hey, look, Mark, what's up? It's all good.
And so look, it was that. And so what happened was the white power structure implanted house Negroes in place to deter from that Black on the ground revolutionary field Negro energy. So what comes up in the late 60s and the 70s, and then Torraine talking about all these movements. You had the women's movement, the feminist movement. You have all these different movements, right? That then becomes codified intellectually through academia. So now you have not only just now you have second wave feminism, that eventually goes in third wave feminism, right? And who then becomes the forefront of these feminist movements? Quote unquote, people of color, right? And so with this now, and I'm not even going to get into my issues with Black feminism, etc. My main point, which buffers and goes along with what Torraine is saying, is that the emphasis then shifted away, right? Just like with the what we saw with that powerful revolutionary energy in the 60s, it shifted away from the masses of people to the house Negro.
Yep.
From the masses of people to now middle class intellectual academics. And now we having these intellectual conversations about now, and now we fast forward from the 70s and 80s. Now we got terms like cis heteronormativity and toxic. Negroes on the street ain't talking about this stuff, right? And that's what I'm saying. That cannot be disputed because now it's not even about Black people, all Black people, Black communities is about, okay, these couple of house Negroes who's prospering and who's moving forward from academia to activism.
And here's the thing about that I want to touch on before we move on to the next speaker. Some of those issues are valid issues, but like I say, a lot of the time, the absolute worst people have control of those conversations. And a lot of times you're debating with people who have not really done a lot of research and they have not read, and they're only going off of what they saw in their think tanks or what they saw in their classrooms, and they try to take that off in the social media, and worse, they try to take it out into the world. And then you try to figure out what the hell they're talking about, and nobody can understand it because it's not based in any sort of any kind of material reality.
And let me follow up to that, Torraine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because this is the thing, right? Yes, those are valid issues, but now they are being addressed on let's help this particular group, right? Let's help these particular individuals, and not let's allow this to be helpful for all Black people, right? And that's where the division comes in, right? If we're only going to, it's sad because now it becomes like almost like a numbers game, right? It's if you're black, then that's a problem. If you're Black and you're a woman, that's a problem. If you're a Black woman and queer, that's a problem. If you're a Black woman, queer and disabled, that's a problem. If you're Black, non-binary, queer, disabled, and then it's like, hold on, like, and that's pure academic rhetoric because we're not looking at real people and real issues. If somebody actually is Black, queer, and disabled, right, then that's not a mathematical equation. And so I'm gonna wrap this up. The healing of that isn't going to be let's solely focus on Black queer. It's going to be how can we as a community heal and solve these problems and address these issues. Because that's the thing. Once you get to the solutions, right? And we're saying that Black men are actually okay. Let's go to the argument that Black men are the ones who are hurting these people. Well, you know what? Guess what? Maybe these Black men were hurt as boys. Right? So if we want to stop the cycle of violence, then maybe we can heal these Black boys. And then we heal these Black boys when they grow up, guess what? They're gonna be loving and respecting and nurturing to the rest of Black communities.
Yeah, but there's no money in that, first of all. And second of all, nobody wants to damage the Black boogeyman syndrome. You know, you're just a beast that sprung out of the ground like Mr. from Color Purple, so you're irredeemable. So let's give you a bullet, put you and incarcerate you. Go ahead.
Well, also, you can't break abut the system and start celebrating many times we're not celebrating too. Okay? We don't have conversation about our Black boys. They're not important. They're not a part of it. I want to just go back to, if I may, again, with Black men being the target of the systemic anti-Black movement. Again, look at the war on drugs. We know those statistics quite well. What was that? 1971, the famous speech by Nixon, and I think a couple of years prior that he had declared the war on drugs. That just meant over policing. You put police in any community, and you put a fine, you put the fine-tooth comb to it. You're going to see things that people are going to get arrested at a higher rate. And you saw the mass incarceration rates. You see what still exists to this day. That disparity, just like amputations, exists. And there's not much that we've been able to do about it to exact change. So again, I think that's been the primary emphasis. Again, you get Black men out of the household. You create this narrative that Black men don't take care of our children. when again, if you go actually look up the real statistics, guess who tends to be most present in their children's lives? Black men. And again, I think that speaks to the potential power that we have if we can just start, maybe internalizing the words of Chuck D and people like you.
I'm glad before I go to Malcolm, I'm glad you brought that up because that's an excellent segue. I got some data in front of me right now. I just pulled out of a folder that I keep with me on hand. According to the CDC, most Black fathers actually live with their children, 2.5 million versus 1.7 million who don't. And whether living in the same home or not, Black fathers are the most involved of all primary recorded race and ethnic groups. That's according to the CDC. A report released in 2013 by the National Center of Health Statistics found that Black dads are more involved with their kids on a daily basis than dads from other racial groups. For instance, among fathers who live with their young children, 70% of Black dads say they bathe, diaper, dress, and read to their kids every day, compared with 60% of white fathers and 45% of Latino fathers. Nearly 35% of Black fathers who live with their young children say they read to them daily, compared with 30% of white dads and 22% of Latino dads. And that's from Pew Research. So these are numbers I made up. This is the white man's research, so nobody can refute this. Now, I've dropped this on a few people in some conversations, and they got mad with me and left out of the conversation, but I just wanted to say this is the truth. Malcolm, what are your thoughts on this, man? Because I do feel like to take it out of the academic sphere into the sphere of just real world conversations and real world politics, I feel like a lot of this disregard of Black men and boys that Dr. Hood Scholar and Dr. Fisher talked about, I think it really has real consequences for how Black boys operate through the world. So what are your thoughts on that?
Man, it's always a numbers game. Like y'all hit on it 110%. It's a numbers game, from what Dr. Travis was saying with just sort of dividing up the categories. It can never just be straight Black people. It had to be Black this, you had to have Black disability, Black queer this. Like all of this was set in place by Lyndon Baines Johnson, with his Great Society program, where they basically disincentivize social mobility, social cohesion, and family units. And then that allowed them to do exactly what Dr. Fisher said, which was discount the Black boy. And it really does play out when you start to see academic and, when you start to see these other categories, because it's just like y'all were saying with the creation of the House Negro. Now you can start taking certain people who fit in these groups and elevating them to become spokesmen that extol the values of these special interest projects. And so when you do that, now you have speakers that basically you have created that know what side their bread is buttered, and they will market this political system all over until the cows come home, because they know that's where they're getting paid from. That's the house right there. They don't want to go back out to the field. They don't want to have to jump back in with all the rest of the people. So the social ramifications of that become that if you start to buck that system, or if you start to, rail against that political ideology, or their candidates that have taken them to the fine, fancy steakhouses and said, hey, we need you to push this to the people. Or, you start going to, and start going into the churches and getting the pastors to bring you up and talk in front of the masses to get the votes for this candidate. And they're really in the back pocket of this company, but they got to use that as their political calling card to get a certain demographic. Now they're going to start attacking you. And that's what you start seeing with some of our sisters that really start railing against us, that preach the message that, hey, it's not just, Black exceptionalism for this special interest group or for Black queer people, and never mind Black men who are the straight white men of the Black community. I know y'all have heard that. Never mind, they start coming at us vociferously. Like it really does become a cult ideology, and you can never rail against a culture. You can never propose a solution, no matter how much of a good place it comes from. That it sucks because it keeps us trapped. And it's more insidious than the white man that literally just outright says, hey, I hate niggas, or the white guy that sits up here and puts us in, that literally looks at us like super predators. It's more insidious because it's a trap.
Yeah, that's real.
I know some of y'all probably remember this movie. Y'all might have seen it when y'all were little. Y'all remember this movie called Claudia? Came out like in the 1970s, but they play it like on BET sometimes.
Man, that's ahead of my time.
Yeah. So I don't think I saw that one.
So the premise of the movie is this. It came out like in 1970. It's with Diane Carroll and James Earl Jones. Diane Carroll plays this woman in Chicago who's got like 8 kids. decent woman, made some bad choices, but she's trying to make ends meet the best she can with these 8 kids that she's raising all by her own. She ends up meeting James Earl Jones's character, who's a garbage man, right? They end up trying to build a relationship, but the majority of the relationship is her trying to figure out how to love this man who's from a lower income status, even though she's struggling herself, and also trying to figure out how she can build a solid relationship with a man and a woman at the head of it when she's dealing with what Dr. Fisher said, the war on poverty programs that would not allow a man to be in the house, a black man. There's a whole subplot in the movie where every time he's sleeping over, she has to push him into the closet or push him out the window because the social worker is going to come and checking if there's a man's shoes in the room or if anything that looks like a man's belongings in there, her benefits could get cut. That went on for real. That sort of thing went on. And I want to talk about that in the next part of this conversation because I want to bring it in. If we're talking about respect, I want to talk about the fact that sometimes a lot of our sisters don't respect us because they've been internalized with this idea that a black man is less than or a black boy is less than. So when it bleeds into your personal relationships, a lot of our brothers deal with those situations. I think a lot of us have dealt with it. I've dealt with it. I've been fortunate enough not to really deal with it on a heavy basis, but I know that's the thing that really goes on. And if anybody wants to jump on that before I start on it, feel free. The floor is open.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on that. And it's a difficult topic, and it's hard to see when Black women are critical of us. My approach, though, if you'll notice, I don't do a lot of arguing with some of the women that get on and basically kind of throw us all into one space. The men trigger them, and so that's not. I mean, black men, we're not on these panels, but you're a man, so we're going to treat you just like the majority who are on those panels. And so, my approach, though, there are women, and we got to meet them somewhere in the middle. They're traumatized too. And sometimes I think, back in the day, they were put on the back burner too. We're all just coming from so many places of trauma and a place of hurt. And I'm not saying every time, there are many people that don't look, they don't want to have a real dialogue and they have no one's interest at heart. And you have to decipher those people quickly. But there are women out there that I've had conversation with that maybe took a little more of an aggressive stance or based on their circumstances and what their experiences were. And after having a conversation and really, having a dialogue, really meeting somewhere closer to the middle, just having an argumentative, conversation.
Gotcha. Malcolm, what you want to throw in on that one?
Yeah, man. I'm 110% with it. Like educating people, bringing people kind of to where I am, because again, I think I'm kind of in a unique place when it comes to just sort of the niche. But I love to do that. But there's it's like you said, Dr. Fisher, man, they're traumatized. And there's so many layers of trauma and armor. And some of it's from social conditioning. And then a lot of it ends up becoming, just sort of learned behavior that sort of takes its own form off of this initial social programming. Like, you get a bunch of black women in a circle, they're gonna start bouncing ideas off each other. And then one thing's gonna lead to another. It's like the same thing we deal with, if you're married or if you're dating, with your girl, where does she get all her bad ideas from? one of her girlfriends has done been through something else, and they all bring it and they just stew it up and twist it around in that pot like some witch's brew. And then next thing you know, you got a whole new problem on your hand. And so it's like we really do have to figure out, like, is it worth fighting a battle sometimes? Which of course the answer is yes. But it's like, which battle is it worth fighting? We need to just come in with a bunker bust and say, nah, this is why you're wrong about black men, or this is why you're wrong about, dating men, or this certain kind of idea. And, it's like, you just got to kind of figure out, like, what's the right approach? Like, do you come in soft, come in hard?
Mm-hmm. Travis, what's on your mind?
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking about this from a black communal perspective, right? And I agree both what both of the gentlemen already said, like thinking about this trauma, right? But when we look at it from a communal, a holistic perspective, what we see is that, and I was literally just talking to Tori about this yesterday, Torraine, which is funny. But what we see is that there's these cycles, right? When I finally got a breakthrough, I finally found this. I went to a whole lot of different therapists, right? And I finally found this black male therapist who helped me understand our trauma better. And what he taught me about were attachments, right? And so what happens is, as children, we create attachments to things, and these attachments then manifest later in life in a traumatic way, right? In a problematic way, in a harmful way. But the reason why this is important is because what happened was I created I had attachments that were created to my mom. But when my mom shared her story with me, you know what I learned? When my mom was a child, she had attachments that were created based on her parents. And as I hear the story of older generations, guess what? Those attachments were created based on their, and we know our story, right? We are in a colonized society. We get here on in these colonies from the transatlantic slave trade, right? So we go from these healthy, vibrant, thriving lives in Africa to enslavement and colonialism, right? And so if you move forward, then bringing this together, like me going back in time and enslavement coming forward, we see how enslavement created these enduring legacies of trauma, right? So much so now, very pragmatically speaking, on an interpersonal level, I'm dealing with traumas from my childhood that's related to the childhood, that's related to the traumas from my mom's childhood, that's related to the traumas from her parents' childhood. And all that leads to, right, one, in a communal level,
It's dysfunction.
right,
Yep.
dysfunction on one hand, but also to get to the point directly to your question, how we view, understand, and respect the men, right? Because if my mom has developed traumas, right? I'm sorry, attachments that are harmful, that are harming her perspective of men, right? Then the sad, unfortunate story is my mom and dad got divorced when I was 2, right? So then the cycle continues where she has this perspective of men that she's teaching me. Or if let's say if this was say she had a daughter, that she would teach her daughter, and then what? How would these daughters view men?
That's the point, man. And I want to make this point very clear that while this is an issue, this is not an issue that all black women do, and this isn't something that all black women project on all black men. The issue, as I always go back to, is the fact that the people who have the loudest megaphones and the people who are put in positions to be the spokesperson for black men and black women's relationships, they're the traumatized, they're the bitter, they're the miserable, and they project that misery onto everybody else. And they honestly do a worse disservice to black women who are out there trying to find them a black man, in my opinion, because miserable people keep other women miserable. You know what I mean? And single people keep women single, and that's the way it works. And I think what has to happen is we have to start moving these conversations out of the mouths of these gatekeepers and try to find some kind of way to put people who are positive and trying to show love to each other and trying to find, for black men and black women who are trying to find ways to love each other, they got to be given platforms as well. And I don't want to put this all on women because you got a lot of bitter dudes out here who build platforms about being miserable as well now.
But
because I know people say that, but there's a lot of dudes out here who need to be the hell quiet as well because they need to go work on their own trauma and stuff.
But one more thing, because this is where I wanted to land at, right? And this is why I wanted to have a communal perspective, right? So then, one, we're being more compassionate towards each other, right?
Amen.
We not just letting anger out on these individuals, right? Because then, right, and this is why all this goes together for what I'm saying. And we need communal healing, right? If we want to break cycles of trauma, we can't do that on an individual level. We need Black families and Black communities to be healed, because then when the whole community is working together, right, that those individual voices can be drowned out, but also those of us who are suffering silently and unknowingly can also get out healed.
That's a brilliant point. If I can I piggyback on that?
Absolutely.
On the communal side of it, I had the privilege of going to Rwanda back in April, and working on developing a vascular surgery program there. And it was I don't know how else to describe it, but what they went through. I think the world knows what the country went through, and the way that they've been able to reconcile. They were murdering each other, like murdering their own family members. If they can figure that out then I'd like to think that we can, work on ways to find harmony. Now, again, the key is though deciphering the people that truly care about our community, because a lot of folks out there, they again, like you said, they have the biggest megaphone, but they don't spend much time around our own folks. They're not respected in the community, and so that to me is one of the biggest challenges. But maybe we should look towards what Rwanda did to bring about reconciliation, because it's beautiful. I mean, the people there, they have their museums, and they certainly remember what happened, but they've been able to move on and and have peace. And if they can do it, we've got to be able to figure out how to do it.
That's man, that's a beautiful thing. And I hate to always, like I said, because I'm like the eternal realist that sometimes cross into pessimism and the catch 20.
Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I know. Man, like I was about to say though, the catch 22 to the whole, when you look at the Rwandan situation that Doc was talking about, like the thing was they had a society of men, it's like, and I don't want to glorify war or bloodshed or violence or anything like that, but to wage a war, you need men. You need pretty strong men that are willing to die for their convictions and their beliefs and stuff. So when we look at like the current discourse between men and women, they call it the gender war. And so Black men, we feel like we being like attacked constantly. And to a weak man, it's hard to tell a weak man, hey, you got to put down your spear and your shield and you got to show love to your enemy. We don't have men strong enough to do that right now because again, they're constantly trying to breed the strength of men out of them to where they can be the bigger person. And in the middle of being attacked by this angry woman who, for some odd reason, she just seemed like she unhinged, say, hey, I understand you, but come here, come to me, we're going to talk. We don't have that level of strength in our men, and it's hard to get that. That's the catch-22 is like, how do you get that back without building strong families? But how do you build strong families when there's a virus, a mental virus being spread into women, telling them to hate and attack you? So that's the problem. If we come away with one strong problem that can help Black men today, it's how do we get to a point where we can all get together and like say, hey, even if they come at us, even if they attack us, man, like we got to reach them in love to bring about that whole peace that he was talking about, with the Rwandan genocide. We look at the Tutsis and the Hutus, like how do you get to that point? So that's what we got to solve.
Yeah, Travis, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's two things, right? So one, this actually is what I was proposing with communal healing, right? In our organization, we always talk about how healing is foundational to Black freedom, right? And what we mean by that is on a very practical level, those of us who are doing the work need to get healed, right? We need to be whole, right? We need to be our best selves in order to do the work, right? So we are healing in the process of healing while we are doing the work of healing others, right? And so to your point, Malcolm, yeah, it's hard to ask some of us who are struggling a lot to do it. But for those of us who are strong enough, right, while you're going through your healing journey, also help to heal others. By doing this through an organization and community, the hope is then there's going to be strength in that community, right? Black unity plus Black love equals Black power, right? So as we unify, then this unity allows, all right, look, I only got what? I only got 30% to give. You know what? Good. Bring your 30%. Oh, and so Torraine, like, I only got 25%. Good. Doc, like, I only got 25%. Hey, that's good. We up to 50% now, right? And y'all see what I'm saying? As we all make our contributions, community, there's strength. And yeah, you may not be able to do it on the individual level, right? But if we community come together, then you know what? Hey, come look, we don't have to respond. We don't have to react. She's saying this out of her trauma. Matter of fact, and I believe we all agree on this. We love all Black people, right? We love Black queer people. We love Black gender non-binary people. We love Black straight men, Black cis men, Black whatever way y'all want to identify men, Black gay men, same. all Black people. We love all Black people, right? So if we want to get to this point where we are having these healthy relationships, responding to these gender wars, not backlashing, right? Not, oh, you hurt me, so I need to hurt you, then you hurt me. Not like that. To break this cycle, right? We come together, community, hold each other together. And then by hold each other up, then it's like, you know what? You know, I know you just said, you called me everything but a child of God just now, but I'm not gonna respond that way. Because I just talked to Torraine the other day. I just talked to Malcolm. We had this conversation. I feel a little better, right? And I understand that you're saying this out of a place of trauma, and I didn't hurt you. If I did, my bad. Let's move forward. Let's heal. Let's become whole together.
I respect that. I respect what you're saying, Travis, and I really do appreciate that. And I think that's a very real thing. But just to bring it back to a place of pragmatism and a little bit of on the ground research and on the ground, there are some people that are so poisonous that the only play they can really be dealt with is just to let them figure it out on their own so they don't infect everybody else. And unfortunately, there are some people that, just can't be reached until they either go get therapy or they just have to be left alone. And like you were saying earlier, brother, sometimes those people, instead of just being left alone or going off to be with the people who they say want them, they got to come around healthy people and spread poison everywhere they go, man. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, J. Cole said it best, right? Don't save her. She don't want to be saved. No, so look, this I like what y'all say on Twitter. Y'all call them the new blacks, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this part of this, right? Because we talk about this all the time in our org, right? Some people gonna get left behind, but some people they're not gonna get left behind because we leave them. They're gonna get left behind because they love Master so much, right? That's why I love what the doc was saying earlier. He said some of these people, they not around us. They not hanging around us. They not hanging around Black folks. Right? Torraine, you know, you and I talk about this all the time. Say that again, Malcolm.
Other than got out the hood, ain't been back since, bro.
Oh, shoot, some of these people ain't never been in the hood. They grew up in the burbs. Yeah. They went to all white schools.
You know what, man? Sometimes I hear these narratives they have about like the Black community. Because look, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, and for people who don't know, I grew up not too far. Yeah. I grew up not too far from that neighborhood where that tragedy happened like 2 months ago and everything. That was in Grand Park. I lived on Myrtle Avenue, which is maybe like a mile away. I used to walk to school from there. And even though it wasn't always the best neighborhood, some of these narratives that these people who have never been in neighborhoods like that say about like the hood, and for lack of a better term, or neighborhoods like that, are so removed from reality, man, that I don't know what the hell they're talking about, man. The barbershop is not no place where Black men come together and get axe handlers like the men on Django Unchained and go out looking for women and non-conforming people to beat. But let them tell it. We go in there and put our ring up like Hydra and go around and swing and get our orders. And then we ride around and pick up trucks looking for people to jump on, man. The the barbershop, man. If you got mothers that got to go to work or got to go to the office or something like that to go get unemployment, you all know mothers can leave their kids in the barbershop with them men, and them kids gonna be just fine. They ain't finna go nowhere till their mama come and pick them up. You know what I mean?
And somebody said something. Look, Black dude dropped the bomb on Twitter. But
even in the hood, you know the dudes who out there in the hood doing dirt. 9 times out of 10, you got some rotten dudes, but 9 times out of 10, what do they do? If they see a kid out there trying to get in their life, what do they tell them, man? Get the hell up from around here. And if I see you out here, we're gonna fight every time I see you because they don't want them in that life. But let people from outside tell them, it's hell on earth. But anyway, that's all I got to say.
No. Of course, Bob. I'm glad you brought up the barbershop because y'all all been there. I don't know last time you went. I ain't
been there in a minute, but yeah.
No, dude said, look. He said, and tell me if this has been your experience. Every time, look, we be saying some crazy stuff. Every time a woman or a young lady walk in, right? Tell me, has this been your experience? The conversation changed. It shifts. Brothers being respectful. They're like, oh, okay, young lady. Yes, ma'am. Y'all seen that, right?
Absolutely. Every time.
Man,
every single time. So I'm like, hold on. What are y'all talking about these barbershops being just these places? I'm like, have y'all ever been to the barbershop?
Even with kids. Even with little kids come in, people kind of change their tone when little kids come in.
Yeah. Somebody starts saying some out of pocket stuff, and they're, hey, hold on, man. We got some kids here. And,
right, exactly.
And then, like I said, you be having the kids come in, like I said, the kid be leaving with like a pocket full of quarters because they swooping up hair. You know, the barber go ahead and teach him responsibility. Hey, you got your haircut? Okay, come on, swoop up some of his hair. I'll give you a
Or
little
they giving
something.
them some little candy or some gum or some crackers or you want something? And then for me, I shoot because I grew up in the hood too, right? And when I used to go to the barber, they always, you know what they was doing? They was schooling me. They was dropping knowledge to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what barbershops these new blacks, I call them, Torraine, new blacks are talking about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
this is
I
the
don't
point,
either.
right? They not in our communities.
Oh,
So
but they
so what
elevated it.
so what it is, right? The round this out to get to your point about these people are poison. Look, we can just push them out. First of all, they're not coming to these what we really are. They're not coming outside. That's one thing. But also, look, we can just tell them, go back, be with Master. You know you love Master so much. Like Malcolm X killed this part. He said, you sick, boss, you sick, we sick, boss. He said, boss, he said the house when Master's house is burning down, he said that the house Negro would go take water and try to put the fire out. So let them go ahead and be sick with boss. Go ahead and let them go ahead and put the fire out for Master, right? We good over here.
All right, man. Let's round it out with this, man. Y'all were on some really good stuff, man. So I'm gonna throw it to you, Malcolm. So what can we do, man, to kind of change some of these narratives, man, and move some of this conversation to a place where we can actually do something productive?
Little circles like this, man, we really got to find a way to capture our media back. I don't know what it's going to take, but we're kind of at the part of the game where you need about 3 touchdowns plus a couple of 2-point conversions, maybe an onside kick to win. Like the slow and methodical method, it would have worked maybe about 20 years ago. Before social media took on and metastasized the phenomena of, just the black inner fighting and the diaspora wars and all the gender war stuff. But, we really got to start putting out content like this, stuff where black men are really just getting together, chopping it up, kind of, showing people like, hey, this is what it is, this is what's going on, but we got to make it entertaining enough to really get a large amount of people. We got to be the force multiplier. And that's the thing. Social media is what it is. It's out here. It's not going away. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, the genie back in the bottle. You can't unrub that one out. So we got to figure out a way to really get our message out and start countering some of these narratives. And unfortunately, it's going to be, we got to get into these entertainment spheres and start dueling with them. Like I said, it's got to be framing everything. You got to frame music culture in the same way. We're going to have to frame sports culture in the same way. Really bring a bunch of people in, because stuff like this that we talk about that's positive, most people ain't tuning into this, in their free time, not unless they're already on that frequency and on that wavelength. And it's like with that, we're just preaching to the choir. We got to find ways to get our message out to the masses, and I'm gonna leave it with that.
All right, Travis, I'm gonna throw this over to you because I know me and you talked about this a lot. How can we move some of these conversations and some of these narratives out of the paint, and some of these gatekeepers out of the paint in an academic setting, man? Because I know you fought with that.
Yeah, so I want to build on what Malcolm said, right? And I think one thing that I feel like is clear from this conversation is the squeaky wheel, right? The squeaky wheel, the ones who most traumatized, they got the bullhorn. Sometimes we need to get the bullhorn, right? So one very practical, pragmatic solution is we need to elevate the actual good examples, right? We got to figure out a way to make the good examples the spread the same way the bad examples spread, right? So that's one very practical solution I'm thinking about. Another way, and I laid this out, I don't know if you know this, Malcolm, but I'm an actual Black male studies scholar. And I laid this out in this special issue I did. This is on my Twitter timeline if you want to read it. But in it, I show how the very practical steps for Black male healing, right? And again, as you can hear from my conversation, I always want the healer to be in a communal context, right? Because it's not, we need to focus on Black men, but our healing is connected to our community, right? So what I propose and what brings us all together is we need to bridge a couple of gaps that we have, right? So right now, we don't really have people in the justice system working with people in the medical field, working with academics, working with people on the ground. And the vision I laid out is all of that coming together, right? So then you have psychologists or psychiatrists working with medical doctors who are working with lawyers, who are working with grassroots organizers, who are working with academics. And we all working together, right? And when we bridge those gaps, the actual tangible solutions that we come with will actually bring healing and freedom.
All right, I think that's where we need to put a pin in it, man. Thank you, brother, so much for coming through, man. This is the first Black Men's Roundtable we're going to be doing, and it's going to be the first of many, I hope. You brothers have an open invitation to chop it up with me whenever your schedules permit. Unfortunately, Doc had to take off. Dr. Fisher he was actually in his residency and he was on call. He just sent me a message. So he's not going to be, so he's got way more important things to do. He's saving people's lives and people saving people's limbs.
Definitely.
But that takes precedence over everybody. We need our people healthy, man. So, brothers, thank you again for this conversation, man. It was definitely needed, man. And I know hopefully the people who are listening, the sisters who are listening, realize that we're having a conversation so we can be better men and we can be better partners in our communities. Hopefully one day we can have a conversation with some of y'all to come in too. We'll see, but we're going to be focused on our brothers. So Dr. Harris, Malcolm, Dr. Fisher, thank you so much again. Y'all have a good night, and thanks to everybody listening.
Peace.
Hey, thank y'all. Thank y'all, boys. Take it easy.